Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to start off today's video by apologising for any noise. I think I've sorted out the microphone issue, but any sort of background noise. It is so hot today that these windows must be open. I cannot close them and I cannot suffer, so any sort of background noise. We live sort of above restaurants, so there's like air vent noise. And yeah, we're just not running with the windows closed today. But today I'm here to do my recent reads number 4, but today I will be specifically talking about books that I have given 2 stars. I'll be talking about 4 books in total. And the first book we're going to start with is The Hollow by Agatha Christie. So I've already seen the ITV adaptation of this book, so I already knew it wasn't one of my favourites going into it. The Hollow opens up with us being in the house of Lady Angertel, I want to say her name is, and you get the feeling that she's quite an eccentric character. She like wakes her husband up at like 4 AM, just goes into her room, it might be like 6 AM, something like that, and just starts talking nonsense about this party that they're having, and they end up inviting Poirot to this party and the other sort of family members of this party. So after Lady Angerthal talking to her husband, we go to like the next chapter and we meet sort of our other main characters, and I think the first one is Gerda and her husband John, and it's basically Gerda being really nervous about the timing of dinner because you get the impression that her husband is just really horrible about these things when she sort of misplans the timing, despite the fact that, you know, he's in his practice downstairs, never bothers to tell her like when he's finishing and when he's coming up for dinner and stuff like that. And you basically get the sense that he's not very nice. He like kind of calls her stupid and thinks she's just really dumb and stuff like that. So that's the scene of their marriage, and then there are other people that are sort of in the family or sort of close to the family, and it's just very clear that, you know, perhaps John is not very nice. Everyone knows that John is not very nice, and perhaps there are also other things going on. So they all end up going to this party at Lady Angerthal's or whatever, and they all think like Gerda's a bit of a wet wipe. They go there, I think they're there for the first night, and perhaps Poirot comes in on the second night or something like that. He essentially walks into a scene where it looks like it's been really staged and there is a body on the floor, and he just thinks, oh god, like, I'm the detective, you guys have set this up, haha, very funny, except the person lying on the floor is actually dead, and it is John, Gerda's husband, and in Gerda's hand is the gun. And so you're just a bit like, well, she shot him, right? But that's basically how the story ensues. You're just trying to find out, did she shoot him? Because then there's loads of conflicting evidence of whether or not she did shoot him, even though we saw the gun in her hand. And very early on we see the gun in her hand, but someone sort of like bumps into her or like tries to take the gun from her, and the gun falls into the water. So then a lot of the fingerprints are wiped off. So that is the mystery we are following. This book very much follows a very similar format to, not I say similar format, the outcome I would say is very similar to Murder on the Orient Express, except kind of not. That's all really I can say about it without ruining it. I didn't enjoy this. I thought it was so boring, and the reasons why I think it's boring I can't really explain because otherwise it would then ruin the story. But other reasons I found it boring is I didn't really care about Gerda and her husband John. I think it was really weird that the family knew that he was basically really horrible and, you know, doing stuff outside of the marriage, but no one really bothered to like save her from that. And in the end, when, you know, things are revealed about what's happened, you're just a bit like, all of this could have been avoided. Like, why? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense what sort of the things he does to sort of protect his wife, when actually when he was living he was never even friendly to his wife. Like, he was just never nice to her. It felt very strange. We went all around the houses of all these different things, and I was just like, all of you just think she's a wet wipe and you don't really like her, and you never really tried to like help her when he was alive. So now that this horrific crime has been committed, like, what is going on? It wasn't terrible to read. It wasn't just like, oh my god, I want to throw this out the window, hence the 2 stars. It was just okay, but really I cared for none of the characters, and I just didn't have any sympathy for Gerda, which is really bad because actually she is in an emotionally abusive marriage, and, you know, they have kids and the kids do lose their father, but I was just like, I really could care less about any of this. The second book I'm going to speak about is Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the second book in the Brown Sister series. I haven't read books 1 or 2. I just picked this one up because I thought this would be the one that I would like the most, and I think actually at the time the third one hadn't come out. So this one is actually about Danica Brown, they call her Dani, and it says here, she knows what she wants: professional success, academic renown, yada yada yada, but romance, been there, done that, burn the t-shirt. And basically this is about her and the security guard at her workplace. So she works at university, his name is Zafir. He rescues her from a workplace fire. He like carries her in his arms, and it gets captured on video by some students, and it just ends up going viral on social media. So they end up deciding that they are going to basically fake their romance. They're going to pretend to date so that they can sort of take on the fame from it, I suppose. The reason they really do it is because Zafir is part of this, like, he coaches like football group or something like that, and the more sort of promo he gets for that, the better for him, I suppose. Like, you know, so they use it as sort of angle. I'm not really sure why Dani does it, because like she's an academic, she doesn't really need that. But anyway, they've always had this bit of a flirtation romance where he's the moody security guard, but she always brings him coffee and stuff like that, and it doesn't really like ever go anywhere between them. But then, you know, the situation arises and they actually start fake dating, and obviously you know what is going to happen. They fake date, but then they find out actually they do really like each other. However, when they've entered into this fake dating thing, they've also started sleeping with each other, and they've decided it's just no strings attached, no feelings, etc, etc. Except in this situation, someone always catches feelings. And I guess one of the aspects of Dani's personality is the fact that, you know, like it says, like I read earlier, she's been there, she's got the t-shirt, she's just kind of like, I'm not going to fall in love, I don't want this, all those sort of things. And obviously, like, this isn't a spoiler, you know what happened. So then it's kind of like all this miscommunication between them, like it just, all of that ensues, and it was just very typical and very dramatic and very unnecessary. And, you know, the writing was actually really good. I think just the plot line of the whole sort of, oh, I'm not interested in relationships, and then, oh my god, actually that's what I really wanted, it was just a no for me. And I guess that's really a common trope in romance. I think maybe it just annoys me because that's what growing up a lot of people around me were like, but then the minute they got into a relationship, or the minute a boy paid them attention, it was like a complete 180 they were doing. So it was really mainly the trope that annoyed me, because I was like, this might be a good story if we could do away with all this miscommunication and just like hurting of feelings and stuff like that. So I found it just very trite and very boring to read, because I was like, this is so predictable and this is actually just annoying. Just be honest about what you want. And maybe it's easier said than done, because, you know, these things are hard. But it was just like, Zafir never really gave off the vibe that he wasn't that interested in her. He was moody, he had other things to deal with, but he never gave off the vibe that he would never take her seriously. What I do like about the book is the amount of themes that are tackled in this. There's sort of a theme to do with Zafir and anxiety, and I think he actually has a diagnosed anxiety disorder. That's done really well. Danica is bisexual, and we also get like sort of influxes of like her sisters and just conversation with her sister, her relationship with her grandma, and just like, I don't know, there's just a lot of world building in this, that we get to see more of Danica's life outside of just like this relationship between her and Zafir. And also her actual career, we get to see more about like what she's passionate about. She's very much into like feminism and women's rights, and she like presents at this panel and stuff like that. So as well as getting a romance story, we do get these other elements which I thought were really nicely done and really nicely weaved in. It was just the romance element that I wasn't really here for, so it wasn't my fave. However, because the Brown series is not just like a follow-on, the first one follows a different sister and the third one follows a different sister, I will still be reading the other two just to see what they're like. At the end of my one, so because I got it on my Kindle, there was an introduction chapter to the third one, and the third one seems really cool. It actually deals with the third sister, I think, who's been cut off from, they have like a trust fund or something like that, and it's been cut off, she's been cut off from that and her parents, and she basically walks into like a restaurant and like, I don't know, I think she's gonna like help a chef or something. And I love books that deal with food, so I hope perhaps there's like some really good food elements in there, talking about food, talking about baking stuff. That'd be really good. But yeah, for me, the actual Take a Hint Dani Brown was 2 stars. You know, I actually really like the title, because that is what she needs to be doing. He's dropping major hints and she's just completely ignoring them. But trope sadly was just too much for me. I couldn't continue to read it and be like, yeah, this is cool. I was just rolling my eyes so much. So that is why I gave it 2 stars. The third book I'm going to speak about is one that sort of breaks my heart, because once I'd read the first book in this series, I was like, I love this. I cannot believe I waited so long to read it. And so I'm going to talk about Record of a Space Born for You by Becky Chambers. I cannot wait to get my hands on the 4th book. I hope I like it, because, oh yeah, I didn't like the 3rd one. So for reference, I gave the first 2 books in this 4 stars, and I gave this 2 stars. And I'm waiting for the paperback of the 4th one to come out. So this book is set, I think, centuries later after the other 2, and in each of these collections, whilst they're set in the same world, we follow like completely different people. We might be on a different planet, yada yada yada. This one is a bit like specifically more different. It says here, centuries after the last humans left Earth, the Exodus fleet is living in a relic, a place many are from but few outsiders have seen. Humanity has finally been accepted into the galactic community, but whilst this has opened doors for many, those who have not left for alien cities fear that their carefully cultivated ways of life is under threat. And then it just talks about these sort of other characters, and these are sort of the characters we follow in the book, except we follow them and then some. And one of the characters is Tessa, and she is the sister of Ashby, and Ashby is the pilot in the spaceship, space plane, whatever, in the first book. So there's that sort of very small link there between some of the characters, and the rest are just like from other different planets. So the blurb sort of ends up with, when disaster rocks this already fragile community, those Exodans who still call the fleet their home can no longer avoid the inescapable question: what is the purpose of a ship that has reached its destination? The issue with this book is it's actually more character driven than actually being focused on, again, like the question, and that is sort of the issue in the first one, and that is why I couldn't give the first one 5 stars, because I felt like we were way too focused on the characters as opposed to the actual journey they were taking. But in this one, it's not done as well. The characters are so boring. You couldn't care for any of the characters, and the characters are all actually from loads of different planets, and or they have like loads of different backgrounds. They are from different planets. Some are on the one that we are talking about, but some have come there to seek like new life, or gone elsewhere to seek new life. And we just don't ever really spend enough time with these characters and learning about their worlds and where they've come from, to then sort of follow them throughout the book. Because then when we're following them in the book, there's these huge time gaps between the chapters, and it just seemed a bit like, well, what's happening? It would actually make more sense to have had a character gone through their story sort of chronologically and then move to another one, but instead we were just getting them interchanged between each other, and it was just a bit like, okay. So it became very hard to actually care about the characters or get attached to their stories, because to me none of their stories were interesting. Even Tessa, her story was like so boring. Like, it was so boring. And then there's one person, I think it's not Tessa, it's like this old woman who's been there for ages, and they sort of perform these rituals and stuff. They invite one of the species from the other planet, and that species sort of writes a report every now and then about that planet. That was probably the most interesting part of the book, but even then, because it was a report, it was actually done really well. It's quite technical and stuff like that, and it's, you know, about them observing these humans and things like that. And just, it was nice to see how that might look to an outside perspective, the things that they are doing. But other than that, yeah, you learn about the world in so many different ways, in the sense that the sort of maybe fringe societies that have also formed, specifically talking about, I guess, a place where people can actually go, and I essentially liken it to prostitution, but I don't, and yeah, I think there was the exchange of sex there, so it was interesting to see the sort of different communities that have formed. But overall, not a lot happens in this book. You just follow these random different characters, and, you know, we're given like 3 names in the blurb or something like that, but actually we follow a couple more, and it was just like, who are these people and why are we following them? This was actually a book I considered DNFing halfway through, because had it been the first one I would have DNF'd it, but because I loved the other 2 so much, I didn't. But for me, the carry on reading it didn't give me anything more. Like, I actually really didn't like it. I guess I didn't end up hating it, so that was great. But I just don't feel like we learned enough. There were so many different things going on, but we also weren't sure why we were following these specific characters. Like, I don't think that they were of any particular interest. So that is my thoughts on that one. I think it did include some really interesting things, like I said, about the thing that you essentially liken to prostitution. They talk a lot about, like, the process of death and how they sort of deal with bodies. That was quite interesting. There's a sort of loss of a character when he joins a sort of, again, another fringe society, and they're out exploring, and you later find out that perhaps exploring is not the right word for it. So there were loads of different things to touch upon, but they were just done in such a random way that it just felt really boring. You weren't really interested in it, and also, like I said, the sort of changing of each character and the huge gaps in between the times that had passed from the last one was just a bit unnecessary. So that's my thoughts on that one. The final book I'm going to talk about, an actual physical copy of a book. I do have a physical copy of A Record-Born Spacesuit, but I CBA to go and get it. This is Murder Among Friends by Jennifer Lewis Williams. This was actually sent to me by the author probably like last year, I'm going to say. This is actually one of the strangest books I have read this year, I would say. So it is about the death of Catherine, who is a pregnant surrogate for a gay couple. Their names are Marcus and Sam. So yeah, she goes missing, and there is her crazy sort of sister, Eva Sue. And there's just so much happening in this book. So Catherine goes missing, and then it says here, when Catherine's body appears on the shoreline of Lake Ray Hubbard 7 days later, Marcus vows to find the killer. However, Marcus has a dark past, one that his husband Sam, a successful lawyer, knows nothing about. And the more clues Marcus uncovers about the killer's identity, the more connections he discovers between a history he'd rather forget and Catherine's mysterious murder. So the book opens up with Catherine, our pregnant surrogate, just going about her day to day, and the couple that she is pregnant for are going on like a trip, so they call in to check on her and stuff like that. I think she's known them for a while and whatnot. Calls in to check on her whilst they're going out of town, and there's another friend that they sort of ask to check in on her, just, you know, whilst they're away, in case she needs anything, whatever, because she is quite far gone in this pregnancy. So yeah, then she goes missing, and she's kidnapped by these people, and we get this really graphic, horrible scene of, yeah, things that should not be happening to people, let alone pregnant people. It was all very graphic and horrible, to be fair. And then we, I guess, come to finding the murderer, and things just end up being such a whirlwind. This book just took me on an absolute roller coaster. There was so much happening, and what I will give the book its dues is there was so much happening that I was just intrigued to see where it would go, because I was just like, where is this, where are we going with this? So I would give it that. It was really interesting in that sense. I just think the overall pacing and just where it actually ended up was just, it was wild. It was a wild ride. The writing was fine, I didn't hate it, but it was such a wild ride. You know, I think you instantly know from the beginning who the killer is, but it's essentially, you know, you kind of think it could be one person, but there's also been a series of like similar murders, so could she have just been caught up in that? And sort of what I guess really distracted a lot from this story is Marcus and his dark past, and sort of what he used to do in the past, and why he's trying to sort of cover that up now that his life is a lot better, and he doesn't really want that coming out. So he's being threatened by a lot of people. People are being kidnapped and taken to like remote places and being left there, and just there's also a lot of just like richness. There's, you know, fancy cars, nice houses, very thoroughbred cats and all those sorts of things, a very luxurious lifestyle. And essentially, yeah, Marcus has to do a lot of stuff to keep, you know, his old life quiet, which involves hiding a lot of this from Sam. And yeah, so Marcus is a reporter, yeah, and his husband Sam is the lawyer. And I don't really know how to explain the book any more than that. It's just basically a murder mystery. And one of the things, I guess, Marcus being a reporter, and perhaps I think he reports on crime a lot anyway, he has a really close relationship with the police, so he gets a lot of insight into the progression of the investigation into Catherine's death. And yeah, there's just a lot of murders in this. There's a lot of murders happening to sort of put people off the scent and actually kill the people who took part in the murder of Catherine, to stop it coming back to one person. And then there's just a lot of, like I said, kidnapping people and putting them in remote locations, and it was just a whole lot was going on. Can't ruin the end for you, but it was just like you're reading it and you're like, but we knew this already, we knew who this would be. But it's interesting to see how it all comes together. And yeah, whilst I enjoyed it, I was just a bit like, I don't know how we got here. So I didn't hate it. Like I said, the writing style was really easy to get through. It was really easy to follow. And I think that is important for the, I guess, because of the contents of the book. You don't want something that is so dense that you can't actually get through. I just found it wild. For me, it was just super wild. And yeah, Murder Among Friends. I think the title actually suggests who it is, but it's not actually them, because I wouldn't say it's a murder among friends. It's a murder among, well, whatever. Can't really ruin it. But yeah, interesting ride. I'm grateful for the author for sending this to me, because it definitely isn't something that I would have picked up on my own. And yeah, no, it was just good to read something different to what I usually read. So that is it. Those are my 4 2-star reads. Yeah, if you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. Let me know of any books that you have rated 2 stars at the moment. I think when I film my other video, and perhaps when I put up another video, I don't know, my editing and sort of filming schedule is sort of off the rails. I spoke about like not finding a 5-star read. Guys, I have found my 5-star read, so I am so happy. So yeah, whilst I'm talking about these 2-star reads, I'm like, I feel fine, because actually I finally read a book that I'm like, yes, this is why I keep on reading. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Drop your comments down below of any 2-star reads that you have read and why you didn't like them, and I will catch you on another one. Bye.